There's a common piece of advice out there that goes along the lines of, what would you say to a friend or loved one in a similar situation? And it's usually dished out in moments when perhaps you're stuck in a shame hole. And the idea behind the advice is to give you a bit of perspective, to see that if you were looking at somebody else, you wouldn't be judging them nearly as harshly as you're judging yourself. The advice is well-meaning and can work in some situations. However, when I was in my darkest moments, feeling like the most wretched human being on the planet, you could have given me that advice, and cognitively I would have been able to have seen, yes, I wouldn't think this way about anybody else, but that wasn't powerful enough to change the way I was thinking and feeling about myself. And maybe you recognize this process in yourself. It's one rule for you and a different rule for everybody else. So it could sound like it's okay for other people to gain weight, but if I gain weight, it's the worst thing in the world. Or it's okay that other people procrastinate. I understand how they might get stuck in a procrastination cycle, but I should be able to do better than that. Can you hear it? That, my friend, is the voice of your ego. Now, I'm not here to demonize the ego. The ego gets a bad rap. We think of people with big egos as being arrogant. And that is not how I'm talking about it. The ego's job is to protect you as an individual. So we're all part of the human race here. We're all part of this big global collective, and we have this experience of being an individual as well. Being a human being isn't easy. There is so much outside of our control. And so the ego is trying to protect this sense of identity and to make sense of who we are within the collective in comparison to other people. So the ego does compare because it's trying to measure. So in order to protect us as an individual, the ego's job is to make us special. And so yes, many egos will do that by trying to be better than other people in some ways. And other egos will, it's almost like they've got a hopelessness story. So other egos will go, do you know what, I can't be better than other people, so I'm going to be the worst. And that's how I'm going to differentiate myself. The ego would rather protect that specialness than that identity, than find peace. Because it feels like if you are peaceful and you're just okay, then that you don't need the ego. It's like it's an entity in and of itself that believes it needs to protect you at all costs and has very clear ideas about what that should look like. I don't think we can get rid of our egos. Maybe some people manage to transcend their egos. I certainly haven't. I'm much better than I've ever been, but it's a continual work in progress at recognizing sometimes when my ego flares up and not seeing that as who I am. So there's a concept I first heard about from Robert Holden, and it's the idea that we have a conditioned self and an unconditioned self. So this really delves into the question of, who am I? And you might not be somebody who spends much time asking that question. I personally think it's one of the most exciting questions to ask as a human being. But the conditioned self is your DNA and your biology, and the thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that have been conditioned into you by your culture, by your family, and by your experiences. Now, here's the thing that I truly believe, and that is that if you're somebody who has or considers yourself to have a low self-esteem, or maybe even self-loathing, you don't like who you are, I might posit that actually you don't like who you think you are. AKA, the you that you don't like is your conditioned self, because you are mistaking your DNA, your automatic thoughts, your automatic emotional reactions and triggers. You're mistaking all of those things for who you actually are. Well, if all we are is a bundle of experiences and our DNA, free will doesn't even exist, because everything we think or do will be determined by our biology and our experience, nothing else. Now, some people believe that. That might be your belief system as well. My experience is that there is a part of me that is not those things. We might think of the unconditioned self as the observer. The reality is that as human beings, we have the capacity to step back and watch ourselves think and even watch ourselves feel. Well, if what we were thinking and feeling was who we are, How would we be able to watch that? Because we would just be that, we would be that thing. But instead, we can step back and we can notice and we can disidentify with that. There is something in us that is able to disidentify with our conditioning. This is brilliant news, because as far as I'm concerned, if you can have more experiences of the unconditioned self, that is when you start to change your conditioning. It is the difference between feeling hopeless, right? Hopelessness is one of the hardest emotions because it comes with this story that nothing is ever going to get better. It's finite and it's dark. And I am very well versed in the feelings of hopelessness. But when there was this shift and I could get in touch with the part of me that was not this feeling and that was not this story, it goes from, oh gosh, I am hopelessness, to I am experiencing hopelessness and I am experiencing a hopeless story running through my mind. Once you start identifying more with the idea that everything you think and feel and go through is an experience rather than who you are, that to me is like a different level of consciousness. And it's a beautiful thing. I do, certainly in my own experience, as a human being, I get pulled into the experience and believing that the experience is saying something about who I am. For example, if this YouTube channel were to take off, that would say something about who I am. No, it wouldn't. It would just be an experience. Whatever happens to this YouTube channel means nothing about me. So whatever the problem is that you are struggling with in life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's food, whether it's compulsive behaviors, anxiety, depression, whatever it might be, none of your problems say anything about who you are. That is the message that I really want to push out there with this video. Because we live in a world where many things are outside of our control, we're much more prone to dualistic thinking, black and white thinking, which means it's either this or it's that. From an ego perspective, it's I'm either special or I'm not special. And I think the reality is both of those things are true. You're not special. You're part of this collective human experience, and everything you've experienced, other human beings are going through something similar. And you are also incredibly unique and special at the same time. I have found so much freedom in moving away from dualistic thinking that both things can be true and neither things can be true, and that's also true and not true. For the longest time, I really believed that I had to overcome my problems, that things had to change in order for me to feel like, okay, I'm all right being a human being here, and I'm okay to live this life. There have been many times when I have really not wanted this life. And on the idea of not specialness, this is the part that releases us from the really harsh self-judgment that we might have. Because I think this idea of self-compassion, for me, grew out of this idea of compassion for the human experience. The fact being that we are human beings with different wants and needs in us. We have traumas, we have triggers, we have complex and rich emotional experiences that are really challenging to navigate. And so of course we're going to often feel like we're not doing our best. Of course, in theory, we could always do better than we're doing. In theory. But what we're doing is based on what we are believing, what we are feeling, and our biology in that moment. My hope for you is that you will have a different experience of yourself, because that is what will change your life, not the circumstances shifting. One of my most profound experiences of this unconditioned self, this pure awareness that exists within me and you, was actually on a retreat that I did a couple of years ago. It's in the UK. It's called A Hero's Journey. I'm going to pop the details below. This is not a promotion. This is no commission or anything like that. This retreat genuinely changed everything for me. And so if it's accessible for you, it might be helpful for you as well. But anyway, if this video was helpful, this is a new channel. It's only my second video. So the support really, really counts at this stage. So I am interested in your thoughts. I really don't want to present myself here as some kind of guru, because I'm not. And a friend of mine, when I was talking to her about this, she said to me, she quoted from a book that she loves by somebody called Denise Duffield Thomas, I think this is. I'm not personally aware of her work, but she says, you don't need to be a guru, just be part of the conversation. So this is the stuff I'm interested in, this experience as human beings. And you watching this are a human being. So I'd love to hear your experience as well. But until next time, be conscious and keep growing.